Good morning, everyone. All right, today is the final day of the week. It is Friday, and unfortunately, ended the week on a terrible note. Wouldn't say a terrible note, but I didn't get a single green options trade this morning, unfortunately. So I'm going to quickly review this morning's options trades and just the general price action. But as you guys know, this entire week I have been sized down roughly 30-ish percent. So my normal size is 30% less than my usual size, and I'm glad that's the case. Makes my green days small, but my red days small as well. And this was the pre-market analysis. We have some nice pivots overhead. We still have this perfect double top on ES here at 54.27 flat. That is some decent bias there. We are nowhere near it at the moment. But we also have some nice pivots below. I mean, I only have the nearest one marked out, as you guys can see. It's this one here. Just the recent overnight low. And I'll mark these ones out too for my futures trading later today. But as you can see, right off the bat, I mean, the trend lines are what really stick out, right? Trend lines are really stick out. It's a perfect trend line on ES. Perfect 3-point touch trend line. NQ, not as perfect. But you know, it's kind of mixed sentiment because typically this is in the formation of a large bear flag. However, this bear flag is not necessarily following a very large downtrend, right? Look at the size of this flag and look at the size of this leg, right? It's not it's not very large, especially when this flag invalidated it invalidated at the high 60% of this drop. That's not a valid bear flag, right? While I'm still kind of leaning bearish for it to break to the downside, I'm more so only leaning bearish for it to get to my nearest pivot, which is this one here. The 257.25 on ES and the 314-ish on NQ. So that's what I'm looking for. And then what I'm thinking is, there's so much demand here. I'm thinking we just kind of do this. And then break this trend line right here. And maybe even go up to this perfect double top. That would be ideal, right? That's what makes sense. That's what's most likely, probabilistically. So if we jump to the 1-minute chart, naturally, we are still technically in a bear flag. We've invalidated most of the bounce. My first trade is probably going to be short to these blue lines here. That's just the first trade. If we play it out, filled puts here. Pretty basic. I took the SPX puts because ES was weaker than NQ. I filled a little bit before the end of the candle, roughly here. This was the first trade I took. Flawless trade. Beautiful bearish consolidation. Validated most of the bounce. And it was pretty green. It got close. Got very close. I thought this trade was in the bag. It was not in the bag, and we reversed, and I stopped out. Give it a minute. Thought I wasn't going to stop out. By the way, I said if we come back down, I'll average up. Almost did average up here, and I was already full size, but then this candle happened. The next candle started with a buying wick. I held off, and praise God I did. And I stopped out very early into this next candle here. So right off the bat, unfortunately had a green to red trade. It is what it is. That was a flawless trade. I'd take that same trade tomorrow, as many of you would. But that was minus 25%. Now I'm like, okay, well, I'm still bullish for the trend lines to break, but I can't enter unless we get like up here, right? If we get up here, that confirms the demand bounce. That confirms that most of the drop hasn't validated. That puts us in range to break the trend line, realistically. So that's what I'm preparing for. And then I get this candle, and I'm like, yep, that I have to get back into puts. And I did. Looking back on it, I maybe could have waited one more candle. No, I mean, 60% of the bounce did invalidate. It did sweep higher highs. It is a very bearish candle. And look at the volume spike we got on the previous green candle indicating reversal. Plus, you also have to keep in mind, yeah, I could wait one more candle, but then 80% of the bounce is invalidated, and I'm right up against PT. One more candle is looking like it's going to be right here. That's a terrible risk to award. So I hop back in. Another fantastic trade setup. Same thing. And this one was not really a green to red trade. I stopped out pretty quickly. I stopped out early into this candle as well for my second loss of the day. I stopped out for only 12% though. The puts stopped losing as much value. I entered at 2.6 and sold at 2.3. So my first loss was minus 25%. Second loss is minus 12%. That's one green trade in total, right? That's very manageable. One green trade is probably going to be more than 37%, right? So now I'm really thinking, okay, it's really starting to look like it wants a short squeeze. It looks like NQ stronger than ES right now. If we invalidate this selling wick, I'll hop in. Kind of started invalidating the selling wick, not enough for me to pull the trigger, and the big reason was NQ is just now touching supply here. And this pivot's only a little bit above, and if it's having a hard time getting up before this pivot, it looks like it may want to sweep it. And we're just getting a lot of selling wicks on the way up. I decided to wait one more candle. Did not enter on this candle. This probably would have been a better candle to enter on. But, after getting stopped out twice, I'm just looking for a little bit more certainty. I'm looking for it to get a little bit close to the trend line. Looking back on it, yeah, I can enter on this candle. It wouldn't have changed the way the trade went. But, yeah, this candle's fine to enter on. I end up waiting one more and it ended up being freaking huge. So I did end up entering on this candle roughly here. But it was interesting because I entered and the premiums went berserk right after I entered. I mean, I filled SPX calls at 3.6 and QQQ calls at 98 cents. Half size in each. Uh, However, they went immediately to 4.4 and they didn't get much higher than where I bought. But now it was close enough to the trend line to where I'm like, now it looks pretty good. We have a large ascending broadening wedge across the board. We have a flawless trend line overhead. This is a gorgeous trade. Every single trade I took was flawless in my opinion. Um, and went up a little bit. Contracts went up, even though it dipped into the red. My contracts were still break even on this candle somehow, some way. I did end up stopping out though. Roughly, not here. I was break even on this red candle. I'm like, ooh, this is super bullish. This is awesome. This means price action is probably going to go up, and the contracts are going to go up a ton more. The contracts really didn't move. They were at 4.4 here. They hit a high of 4.0 here. I'm like, oh, the contracts are starting to chop pretty hard now. So that was unfortunate. Ended up being another green to red trade, unfortunately. I stepped out on this candle here. Just honoring my stop losses. That's all you can really do. If I look back in time, it's still tough for me. I'm very much more indecisive if I stop out of two flawless trades in a row, because statistically that's not likely. Looking back on it, if I did end up pulling the trigger earlier at 6:45, yeah, I would have been a lot more green. I don't know if I would have stopped out. No, yeah, I don't know. Because it did dip into demand, and this is a nice candle to stop on as well. I did get a buying wick though. I'm not too sure. It looks like NQ dropped a lot. I mean, this is a big drop. Even if I did fill right here. Look at the risk to award. That's barely a 1-to-1. Filling early might have been a little. I don't know. It just depends on my mood. It depends. I can't say in hindsight if I would have avoided the stop loss or not. But anyways, I stopped out here. It was a good stop loss. I stopped out at. Give me one moment. I stopped out at 2.4 and 0.75 for minus 23 and minus 33%. Keep in mind, I'm half size in each. Whenever I enter QQQ and SPX calls, I don't know which one's going to be stronger, so I split the difference. If my average trade size is 3,000, I'll put 1,500-ish in each. I was a little bit heavier in QQQ though, because it was stronger, but it didn't stay that way. So my average loss on that trade was like another 28%. Pretty, yeah, it was like minus 28%. So now I'm red by a grand total of like minus 65%, which is two green trades. Again, not bad. But now I'm at the point where it's like, okay, if it gets down a little bit more, and I almost wanted to get into puts on this candle because I still have bullish and bearish bias. If we invalidate this drop, I'm bullish for the trend line to break. If we get a little bit lower, I'm bearish for the blue line to get hit, right? Um, I'm thinking both are going to happen at some point today. Either we're going to break the trend line to the upside, reject supply, then come down for the blue line, or we're going to get to my blue line, we're going to sweep it, and then go up, which is what I really tried to get this morning. It's really unfortunate that didn't work out, because if this happened, if we swept this, not only would have this been a green trade, but now I would have been able to enter calls earlier, which would have been roughly here, because not only did it invalidate more of the move because the move was further extended out, but now we're adding a proper liquidity sweep to it. There's no uncertainty there. And with the extra liquidity swept, it probably would have been enough to push through the supply, at least get a couple of trims off before it reversed. So pretty unfortunate. But yeah, that's the plan. If we invalidate this drop, I'll enter calls again, give it one more attempt, or puts again, give it one more attempt. And I'm only willing to take 4 trades. So this next trade is going to be my last trade. Because if I take one more loss, I'm going to roughly be negative minus 90%, which is 3 green trades. That's like my average decent morning. That's like my average good-ish morning. And I try to keep my red days, or my bad red days where I go like 0 and 3 or something, which is very rare. This is the first time that I've gone 0 and 4 maybe this entire year, maybe once, one other time this year. But given the market conditions, it kind of makes sense. Still keeping that, how rare this red day is, but still keeping it under my really good green days are about the same as an average green day. That's ideal. So I'm only taking one more trade. And it ends up being calls. Because we exploded the upside, I can't not take calls here. This is the highest probability trade I took all morning, and all the trades were fantastic. Same thing. Half size, SPX. Half size, QQQ. I don't want to draw it out. It reversed right back down. And I stopped out, I think at 712 I stopped out. Let me check. Yep, 712. Stopped out right here. Quick. The loss, just like the second loss though, I mean, I entered those calls at 3.2 and 84 cents, and I stopped out at 0.7 and 2.65. So those losses on both QQQ and SPX, I lost exactly 17% on each. I was half size in each, so I only averaged a 17% loss. So that's not bad at all. I think my average loss today was like 22% for 4 trades. But every single trade was flawless. There's not much to review. It just is what it is. After I stopped trading, I could have been tricked into calls again. Probably not, though. I would have waited at least one more candle because NQ was low. Would have definitely been in puts for this drop. Then the blue line hit, and then we got a nice bounce. But unfortunately, I would have lost again. Actually, I don't know if I would have been in because NQ didn't get very high. But roughly around here is where I want to enter. So I did miss out on one win, but it doesn't matter because I wasn't willing to take another loss. I wasn't willing to go 0 and 5. So the way I dictate my trading is if I'm not willing to lose the money, I don't take the trade. That's how all of you guys should dictate it. But yeah, chopping down. If no pivots are swept, I don't make any money. You guys know this. And no pivots got swept. So I didn't make any money. We didn't get a pivot swept until the very end of the first hour. And by then I was already 0 and 4, not willing to go 0 and 5. But I'm really hoping that by this afternoon, for my futures trading, I can take longs. It's going to look pretty good. I'm hoping we chop a little bit more and then come up. I would love to take a long trade to here, maybe to this high. Hell, maybe, depending on how good it looks, maybe I can have a record trade and go for the 54.27 pivot. That's a perfect double top, but That's a stretch. That's really far. I mean, if I were to enter that, I'd have to enter somewhere up here. And yeah, it's roughly 100 points. Yeah, that's a big trade. Not undoable, not impossible though. But this is a really choppy day, like very very choppy day. But this trend line's got to break at some point. Like these trend lines have got to go. The more times you test a resistance, the weaker that resistance gets. So unfortunately, I'm thinking this trend line is going to break to the upside before 1:30 Eastern. But yeah, that was my trading this morning. Wouldn't do anything different. The one trade where I potentially could have entered calls earlier, in hindsight, yeah, I could have entered there, but getting stopped out of two flawless trades in a row makes you a little indecisive, and you want extra confirmation. There's nothing wrong with that. So yeah, I wouldn't change anything. That's just the way it went. I start my future trading at 1:30 Eastern though. But anyone have any questions regarding anything that I've talked about? It looks like it's going to try to break this trend line to the upside. It's definitely due for it. And it looks like NQ is flipped stronger. But I cannot trade it until 1:30. But no one has any questions. Everyone's good. All right, sweet. Well, I will once again upload this to YouTube and ping you guys when it is ready. I'll see you guys for unless something crazy comes up, I'll see you guys for the live futures trading. Yesterday, I told you guys that I was very due for a red day, and it was red. I think the last 5 or 6 days in a row have been green. So it was due for a red day. It was red, but it was a really good day because my stop loss was 294 ES ticks away. Sorry, my stop loss was 295 ES ticks away. Keep in mind, I was only with 3 micros due to that. I know, responsible adult. It came down 294 ticks. Missed my stop loss by one single tick. Went all the way back into the green. And it did end up stopping out way later in the day after chopping up and faking out and doing a bunch of crazy things. But the nice thing is because if it didn't miss my stop loss, I would have had to re-enter the same trade, and I would have lost twice as much yesterday. I would have had 2 losses. But because I got lucky and missed my stop loss by one single tick, I only had one loss, which actually was freaking fantastic. So very close to. I was one tick away from having 2 losses yesterday. So we'll see if today's any better. Um, but lately, though, with the strategy, it's just streaky, right? You'll have 4 green days in a row, 3 or 4 red in a row, another 3 green days in a row, 2 red in a row. So we'll see if it streaks like that. But all right, I will see you guys later. I'll let you guys know when this is posted. If you guys need anything, feel free to reach out. And do not let me forget the giveaway at the end of the day today. I forgot yesterday because we're in live futures trading and that trade was stressful the entire time. Um, so I had to I just stepped away and laid on my couch and waited for the trade to stop out. Um, but don't let me forget the giveaway. I owe you guys that. We'll do that at market close right before the quiz. All right. I'll see you guys later. Good luck if you continue to trade. And yeah, see you guys soon for the live futures trading.